Welcome to Animal Posse, the podcast dedicated to the people and rescues making a difference in the lives of animals. Today, I am bringing you a special segment straight from a recent class that I did all about bottle feeding and fostering kittens. So let's dive in. I'm Dixie. I run the Unwanted Feline Organization. I have been a foster for probably about 17 years. I primarily do bottle babies. I do all ages, of course, but I specialize more in bottle babies because I could take them to work with me. First, we're going to go over just trying to determine the age of a kitten, just in case you find a kitten or in case you want to get involved with helping a kitten. A lot of people on social media will post them. Now, one thing that I do want to say about that is if you ever see people posting pictures of bottle kittens on social media, the first thing, you don't want to jump in and take them right away. You want to tell them they need to wait for the mom to come back. Because most of the time, the mom's just moving them around, and give that mom time to come back and pick them up. I say to wait about 8 to 10 hours. If it is going to be a newborn, especially like with the cord attached, then you definitely don't want to wait longer than, I'm going to say, 6 hours probably max. Now, if it's in a bad spot, like busy highway, middle of a sidewalk, that's a little bit different story. Bad rain. I know the last ones that were picked up, they were in a puddle. So they picked them up because if they didn't, they would have most likely drowned. So the newborn kittens are going to look pretty bad. Their ears are going to be folded in. Their eyes are going to be closed. They're not going to really look like a kitten. And so if you're going to get a kitten this age, of course, one this age is going to have to be fed more frequently. And I'll go through that too as we go on with the presentation. When you have a 2-week-old kitten, that's going to be when they're going to start to walk. And their eyes should be open at that point, or at least starting to open at that point. When you get to a 3-week-old kitten, they're going to start moving around pretty good, and you'll notice that their teeth are going to come in. That's going to be when you're going to start weaning. By 4 weeks old, they should have all of their teeth. And you're going to notice that they're going to start running around and playing with each other. And then by 5 weeks, they're almost fully functioning. Now, when they are newborns, between like 1 and 3 weeks, they're not going to be able to go to the bathroom by themselves. You have to help them with that. So you do stimulate them to go to the bathroom. I'm going to show you how to do that too with my stuffed animal because we could not find bottle babies to bring with us today, which I'm not complaining about. These are going to be your basic supplies that you're going to need if you are fostering for a rescue. For the most part, the rescue is going to provide all this to you. If bottle feeding is something that you think you might be interested in, I would say just get some of the supplies to have on hand. They're pretty inexpensive, and that way you have it if an emergency comes up. All right, so first thing, we're going to have a bottle. This is going to be the classic nipple that comes with these bottles. I absolutely hate these nipples. I use them unless I don't have the other type. Now, they don't come with a hole in them, so what you're going to have to do is you do have to cut a small hole in them. And when you do cut the hole in them, you also want to make sure that it's going to just do a drip out. You don't want it to come pouring out, because if it's pouring out, it's going to be too much milk coming out, and that can actually aspirate the kitten. The nipples that I use are called a miracle nipple, and you're going to see it's a lot smaller. You'll see this miracle nipple. It is made for tiny baby animals. So most of them tend to take that pretty easily. It does fit on the bottle. What you're going to do is you would actually unscrew that bottle, and you're going to remove that other nipple and put that one in its place. Now, another thing that you could do is you can use a small syringe. So you can put either of the nipples on the edge of a small syringe, and this works too. Now, only thing with doing this is sometimes when they use these syringes, they can easily suck it out of the syringe. Sometimes they can't. If they can't, do not push the syringe because you can aspirate them. And then another tool that you can actually use is a small paintbrush like this. So if you have a kitten, especially a tiny one, that's having difficulty with using the nipple or sucking on the nipple, because some of them will have that problem, you want to make sure they're getting enough fluid, you can actually use a paintbrush. So what you do with the paintbrush is you would just mix your milk, you're going to dip the paintbrush in, and then you just put the paintbrush in their mouth. This paintbrush is a way more tedious method. You don't want to rely solely on this. but this is going to get them fluid and it's going to get them the nutrients that they need to help them till they get to the point where they're going to start suckling more. And this is one of the powdered milks that you can use. You can also go buy a can. The can is a lot easier. It is also a lot more expensive. So most rescues are going to just go ahead and go with the powder. There will be instructions on it on how to mix it. Most of them are 1 part powder to 2 parts water. Now, when you mix them, you don't want to get it too frothy. Sometimes when you mix, you'll get kind of clumps in it. So you want to make sure you break those clumps up with a spoon or something when you're mixing it. Bottled water is always going to be the best. You can use tap water. The temperature of the water, we're going to use warm water. You don't want to use cold water. Another thing, if you don't have access to this, you find kittens, there are emergency formulas that you can make. Don't ever use cow's milk, though. Cow's milk will make them very sick because they can't digest it properly. Another good thing that you want to have on hand, too, is going to be turkey or chicken baby food. You use that for weaning. And also just training them how to eat in general for them to lick off of your finger when we get to that weaning stage. The other thing that you're going to need is some type of heating pad. These are microwavable discs. I get these off of Amazon. You put them in the microwave. It has instructions on the inside of it, depending on your microwave and the wattage of your microwave. These last for 8 hours. These are an absolute lifesaver. These are so much better than a heating pad because I know now a lot of the heating pads have an automatic shutoff feature. So I definitely recommend this. And one of the top things that you want to do when you have bottle babies is you need to keep them warm. Another thing that you're going to want to have on hand is going to be Karo syrup. So most people do have that at home because you will see, and I'll go over that a little bit more, you can have sugar crash. If you have a sugar crash, you take a little bit of it on your finger, not even like an eraser size amount, and you just rub it on their gums, and usually that'll bring them back if they're having a sugar crash. And I'm not going to say it's a common thing. I've done it several times, but it's happens enough that you want to make sure you do have Karo syrup on hand. Another thing, this would be something that would be provided by your rescue. It's called propectolin. And what that is, it's a probiotic and an anti-diarrheal medication. And so you want to make sure you do have that on hand. If you ever take kittens from a rescue, ask them if they have it, because it's better to have that on hand than not have it on hand. Another thing is going to be for your cleaning supplies. You want to have paper towels handy. And you're going to use that to stimulate them to go to the bathroom. All right, so a basic setup. So what I do is I'm going to use a carrier like this for mine. This is a pretty big carrier. This would be good for them for up to 4 kittens till they're about 4 weeks old. It gives them room to move around. It's big enough to when they start using a litter box, you can put a little tiny box in there. And I like the top load ones because it's easier when you go to take them out. It's not required, but that's just my preference. So what I would do is I would take this heating disc. You're going to put some blankets in here. You always want to make sure that you do cover the heating pad or the heating disc so it's not too hot if they get directly on top of it. Most of the time they'll move away from it. That's why you want to have something where they have a little bit of room where they can move away from the heat too if they want to move away from the heat. And then, like I said, when they get a little bit older, you would put just like a little tiny shallow box. And that's what I put in the back of it for a litter box. Now we'll get into the feeding. You want to feed them like they're going to feed off of mom. So you don't want to flip them over like a human baby. This is an absolute no-no. If you flip them over like a human baby, you're going to end up aspirating them. You want to make sure that they're upright where they would be on their belly. Think of how they're going to eat if they are on their mama. So when you mix your formula, you do want to use warm water. I mix my formula like most people do baby formula. When I heat it up, I don't heat mine up in the microwave. A microwave will not heat it up evenly. So if you do heat it in the microwave, you have to make sure you shake it. You have to give it a lot more time to cool down. So I will actually do a cup of hot water and I'll put the bottle inside of the hot water until it warms up.
And then, of course, I'm going to test it on my wrist to make sure it's not too hot for me. Pretty much what you do with a human baby. They're going to try to put their paws on your hand. Sometimes they get very frustrated and they will just be like lashing out like crazy, trying to find a place for them to rest. So you might want to get like a rag or something, wrap that on your hand, or even wrap them up like a little burrito. It's just they get very frustrated because they're looking for their mom to put their hands on and she's not there. As far as the bottle feeding, you're going to gently open their mouth. You're going to stick the nipple in. Some of them will take to it right away. Some of them, it's going to take a little bit longer before they realize they can actually suckle on it. So you might want to do a drop of it to put the milk on the outside of that nipple so they know what's going to be there. Here's a trick that I use. I like to actually close my fingers around their mouth and it helps them to suckle. If they take in too much milk, they're going to choke on it. When they choke on it, it's going to go into their lungs. That's going to be the aspiration. It can cause pneumonia. Now, even if you're feeding them in the correct posture, you're going to have some kittens that eat really fast. If you have kittens that eat really fast, you want to make them slow down. So make them take it slow, give them a little bit, pull the bottle out, then give them a little bit more. Because otherwise, they're going to eat so fast that they will end up choking. If you do have one that ends up choking, and you'll notice it right away, you'll hear them coughing a little bit, you're just going to take them, turn them upside down a little bit, and just do a gentle tap on their back. Most of the time, it has cleared it for me. I've never had a kitten aspirate. So, big thing, feed in a normal position. Do not feed upside down like you would a human baby. If they do start to choke, just gently tap them on their back as you lay their head upside down a little bit. All right. So, the frequency of the feedings. A newborn kitten that's going to be up to a week old is going to require a feeding every 2 to 3 hours. I personally will wake my kittens up to make sure that they do want to eat. So I'm pretty on top of it. Like for a newborn, for me, in the daytime, I feed them every 2 hours. Now, when it comes to night, I know it's a pain getting up every 2 to 3 hours at night. You can push it closer to the 3 hour mark at night, as long as you're getting up in the day and doing it every 2 hours. Once they get to 2 weeks, the frequency is going to change a little bit. So at 2 weeks, you're going to do it every 3 to 4 hours. So 2 to 3 weeks, every 3 to 4 hours. When they get to this stage at night, you can actually sleep like maybe 5 hours. So you can push it out an hour, provided that they're eating really well during the day. Now, I do keep like a baby monitor on mine. So if they do cry, I'll let that natural cry wake me up and then I'll go see what they need. 3 to 4 weeks is going to be every 4 to 5 hours. And again, at night, when you're looking at this, if you're feeding them at a regular frequency during the day, you can really push it out to 6 hours. So you can actually get some sleep. And then 4 to 5 weeks old, if they're still on the bottle only, it's going to be 5 to 6 hours. If they're not on the bottle, of course, you can just put the food out, offer them the food. You want to make sure, monitor that they're getting all the food. But at night, at 4 to 5 weeks, you should be able to get like a 7 hour sleep, provided that they're eating good. Now, of course, all of this can change if they're not feeling well. Because I just had some 6-week-old kittens that got sick, and I was getting up every 2 hours in the middle of the night to feed them. So, provided that they're healthy, this schedule is a pretty good schedule that you can go on. We went through mixing the formula, but I'll go over it again. So, again, with the powdered formula, you want to make sure you mix it so it's nice and smooth. It does have a tendency to get lumps. So, I use like a spoon to break it. Now, I've heard a lot of people say you don't want to use like a frother to froth it up. So, I've never used that. I'll always just mix it with a spoon. Now, another thing that I'm going to mention too about the formula. There's a lot of things online that tell you need to have a different nipple for each kitten. I've never done it. I don't know how anybody does that. They're all together, so if one of them has something, they're all gonna get it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Another thing that they say online is to throw your formula away after every single time you mix it. So if you mix it and you have formula left over, they're like, throw it away. I don't do that. I'll keep it for up to 24 hours. After a feeding, what I'll do with the formula that I've mixed up is if I have any left in my bottle, I'll go ahead and stick it in the refrigerator, take it out, and warm it up in a cup of hot water. When you feed them, of course, like I said, some of them get frustrated with eating because they're really hungry and they're not understanding how to suck it through the bottle. So you do have to have a little bit of patience with them, especially if you were going to feed with the paintbrush. This would take a long time. When they're very young, a lot of people freak out over them being constipated. When I was new to bottle feeding, this was during a hurricane a long time ago, and I found a kitten. And so we didn't have any power. I'm trying to bottle feed this kitten. Didn't have to worry about the heating pad because it was like 90 degrees in the house. The kitten didn't want to go to the bathroom. And she's a little tiny kitten. So we're like 1 to 2 weeks old. And I was absolutely freaking out because I'm like, it's been 2 days. This kitten didn't use the bathroom yet. So I actually went on social media, and this is how I found my vet. And, like, I was all frantic. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I found this kitten. Nobody's open." I'm like, "The kitten hasn't pooped in 2 to 3 days," and she's, "Don't worry about it unless they're crying and their belly's hard." So, I have gone with that since she has told me that. I don't freak out about it because once it starts coming out, it seems like it doesn't wanna stop. So, yeah, that initial poop can sometimes be a little bit of time, and it shouldn't be concerning unless the belly is hard and they're, like, very uncomfortable. And you'll know when they're very uncomfortable because kittens, like human babies, they're gonna cry for a couple of reasons. They're gonna cry because they're hungry, they have to go to the bathroom, or they're cold. So, for the most part, the kittens really don't cry unless something's going on. And if you've ruled all 3 of those out, then at that point is when you'd wanna say, "Okay, maybe they're not feeling well." And so it could be like they're colicky or something like that. So, now there is a trick, of course, for constipation where you can put some like a few drops of olive oil in the bottle. But the problem with that is if you put too much, then you're gonna get diarrhea, which is gonna be a whole 'nother thing. And the diarrhea is more life-threatening to them than anything, just because they are so small. You should see them urinating after every meal. And a lot of the times pooping, it should be a small amount. You will notice too that kittens do burp after they eat too, so don't be alarmed by that. So a few minutes after you feed them, you will notice that they're going to burp like a human baby. So stimulating to go to the bathroom. Kittens cannot go to the bathroom on their own. You do have to stimulate them to go to the bathroom. So what you're going to do is you can use a warm, wet paper towel and you just wipe their rear end. Do it until you notice that they do go. You will notice that they go. Just give it a few wipes. Usually they'll urinate right away. You might have to go a few more times to see if they're going to defecate. They don't always defecate. Like I said, don't get too upset over it. A lot of the times when they do defecate, they do sound like it's a shock to them. And they'll do this up until they're probably about 6 or 7 weeks old. They'll go poop and they'll just start screaming. So don't be alarmed if they do that. It's like the worst thing is happening to them and they all do it. I've never had kittens not do it. After every feeding, you are going to do the stimulation until they're about 2 to 3 weeks old. At 2 weeks old, you'll notice that you're going to have to start changing the bedding in the carrier a lot because they will start just going on their own. Now, they're not going to go look for a particular place to go. But now the beauty of this is by the time they're about 3 weeks old and they're a little bit more mobile, if you stick a box in there with some newspaper, you got to make sure it's a very shallow box. They will start going in that box on their own. So you don't have to train them to use the litter box. Now, they will have a lot of accidents. And even up to the point where they're like 6, 7 weeks old, they're going to have a lot of accidents, but they're babies. It's not fun. It's a lot of laundry. Now we're going to get into the weaning. I actually find the bottle feeding part is easier than the weaning part. Okay, because some of them are very stubborn with wanting to learn how to eat, and it is very messy. We call it swimming in cat food. Before the weaning, this is something that I have always done, and this also helps the kittens get a little bit more nutrients, is I use baby food, or the other thing I use is called a churu. So it's CHURU, and it's a cat treat kind of consistency of baby food. I will take a little bit of that starting at when they're at like about 2 weeks old. Not a lot because we're not onto the weaning phase yet, but we want to start introducing them to solids. So I will put a little tiny bit of that into their bottle, shake it up. So the bottle's still going to be liquidy, but there's a little bit of a food particle in it. Now, you could do that with a cat food too, but the problem with doing that with a cat food is it's a little bit chunkier, so that'll clog the nipple. That's why I tend to use the really soft foods like that. And I'll mix it in until we get to a full set of teeth. When you get teeth, you're at weaning age. And you'll notice when you start getting teeth too, because they're going to start chomping down on that bottle, and they might chomp down on your finger a little bit, and you'll feel those teeth. At that point, you're going to add a little bit more. I'll do a little tiny bit at 2 weeks. And as we get closer to 3 weeks to that weaning age, I'm adding more and more into that bottle. And once they hit between 3 and 4 weeks old, you can take a little bit of a gruel. The gruel is equal parts of the food and the formula. Mix it together. It's not a full liquid, so it's not going to flow, but it's still liquidy, if that makes sense. You're going to take it, put some on your finger, and put it in their mouth and see how they react to it. So some of them are going to be really receptive to it, and they're going to go right after it. And others are going to be like, no, I don't want that. Give me the bottle. So when you do have the ones that are receptive to it, you can put it in a dish. And I notice a lot of the times if you put the dish in front of them, they don't understand how to position their head to get to it. So I'll put it in a shallow dish. I will actually hold the dish right up to their head at an angle so they can easily get to it. When they start learning it's coming out the dish, you can put the dish on the floor and then put them in front of the dish. And that's usually how they'll understand, okay, it's in that dish there. I got to put my head down to get to it. And then that's usually at the point where we have the swimming in the cat food. They are going to get covered in cat food from head to toe. It's not fun. Make sure you put a whole big thing of newspapers out, put the dish there, and be prepared to wipe them down. You're going to notice that after they eat, the first time that they're going to actually shake a little bit after they eat, because it's like a little shock to the system, and it will affect their stool. So you might see diarrhea because they're getting used to that, but if you're not overfeeding, it should clear up right away. So it shouldn't be anything that's going to be of concern. If you're weaning them, you can paintbrush. Make sure it's new and you haven't used it, of course, for paint. This is actually something that wildlife rehabilitators do. I actually learned this tip because I bottle fed rats. This is the tip that I got from learning how to bottle feed rats. And the funny thing about that is actually like the rats were faster to take the bottle than kittens were. I was actually bottle feeding rats and kittens at the same time. Any questions before we go on to issues? How do you know if they're drinking the bottle too fast? They just gurgle it down. When you put the liquid in here, and if it's going down super fast, you see a lot of bubbles in here, you need to make them slow down. You'll notice too, because they'll start choking. Once they do it one time, you know what kitten it is. So you're like, typically what I'll do is take my time and give them a little bit, pull it back, give them a little bit, pull it back. Another thing too, I would like to mention is there's a whole bunch of guidelines that are going to be online too about how much that you're supposed to feed a 1 week old kitten, how much you're supposed to feed a 2 week old kitten. I don't really go by that too much, okay? Because every kitten is going to be a little bit different. You want to make sure that they are eating. You want to make sure that they're gaining weight. So as long as they're still active and they're eating and they're gaining weight, then you're okay. Okay. I don't concentrate on the numbers. I've been doing this such a long time that I used to when I first started out. It would be like, okay, like a 1 week old kitten is supposed to have this amount every single meal. And I would be feeding them and I'm like, okay, this kitten only got half this amount. And it would make me start panicking that, okay, this kitten isn't getting enough food. But I found out over the years it's a per kitten basis. So as long as they're getting something, that's what you want them to get. Now, another thing that I do want to mention too is when you're in the weaning stage, some of them are fast, some of them are slow. So when I offer them the gruel, at that point, I will offer them a little water, very shallow dish. And I always find that the thing they're most reluctant to do is drink water. That seems to take the longest. So if they're not drinking water, the only way they are getting their fluid is actually in their food. So you want to make sure that you make the food nice and soupy so that they're getting fluid from the food because they're not if, otherwise they will dehydrate because they're not drinking the water, they're not taking the bottle from you. So you just want to make sure you keep that food nice and moist. We'll go through possible issues. One is going to be hypothermia, which is going to be a low body temperature. I always keep my kittens on heating pads. The only time I really see hypothermia is going to be if somebody brings me a kitten. If somebody brings me a kitten, I've seen them before where they're like very lethargic, unresponsive, and at that point I do warm them up. If you notice that your kittens are acting like a little bit lethargic and they do feel cold, then you do want to try to warm them up. So some of the ways that you can do that, of course, you could put them on the heating pad. We stick them on our chest. Okay, because they get a lot of heat coming from you. So we'll actually stick them in our shirt and we'll hold them in our shirt like that and to see how they're responding. With the hypothermia, you don't ever want to feed a kitten that's cold. So if they're hypothermic, you don't want to feed them anything because it can cause more of a shock to their system. Hypothermia is one of those things that they have to go to the vet for. Okay, so you're going to do an emergency measure, try to put them on a heating pad to keep them warm. Make sure you flip them from one side to the other to keep them warm. Put them in your chest to help keep them warm, and then you're going to get them to the vet. Because hypothermia is bad. If their temperature drops below a certain level, they're not going to come back. So the other big one, and I find that this is the biggest one, I touched on this a little bit with the not drinking water on their own, is going to be dehydration. The best way to test for dehydration is to pull up their skin and see if their skin kind of stands up. Now, I know on a baby kitten, it's going to be hard because their mom grabs them by their scruff. So if you pull up the scruff, a lot of the times, even for a hydrated kitten, I see the scruff staying up because that's where the mom grabs. So actually what I do is I look at the belly. If the skin looks wrinkly on the belly and not firm and tight, that's usually a sign of dehydration. Another thing is you'll notice when you go to pick them up, one day they might feel nice and plump and warm and heavy. And the next time you go to pick them up, they feel like they lost substance. I guess that's the only way that I can describe it. It's like they lost a lot of weight quickly, but they couldn't have lost weight that quickly because they've been eating. Okay, that's usually going to be dehydration. So at that point, you need to get them fluids. You can offer them some unflavored Pedialyte. If I suspect dehydration, I will give them some unflavored Pedialyte mixed in with their formula. And you can give them that, but they most likely are going to need to get some sub-Q fluids. So if you're working with a rescue, then of course your rescue should be able to help you with that. If you're not working with a rescue, then you're going to definitely want to take them to the vet for that because dehydration is like the worst thing for them. It'll kill them fast. If you catch it early, it's not as much of a problem as if you catch it late. Get yourself a little food scale and you can weigh them. If you don't see them drinking, assume that they're not drinking water on their own yet. And you want to make sure that they're getting it in their food. The other possible issue is going to be a sugar crash. This is going to be what you're going to have your Karo syrup for. With a sugar crash, you'll just notice like one day the kitten's going to be absolutely fine. You're not noticing the dehydration. If you check, turn it around, doesn't look like it's dehydrated, but the kitten is just not wanting to move around. That's usually going to be a sugar crash. It's not going to hurt to put a little bit of Karo syrup on their gums. Just dip your finger in the Karo syrup, tiny little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot. And then you're just going to open their mouth and rub it on their gums. If it's a sugar crash, they're usually going to come up. It's like almost instantaneous. If you do that, you notice that it's not coming through right away and they're not becoming more alert, then at that point you would want to get them to a vet. I'm going to jump over to illness. Let's say that you have the dehydration, you could have the possible sugar crash. Either of those two could mean that there's some kind of illness going on that you don't see. So that's why if you're doing like the little bit of Pedialyte, you're not seeing them be more responsive. You do the Caro syrup, they're not being more responsive. Then at that point, you want to almost think there's something else going on. And so it could be some kind of illness. The other signs of illness is just going to be any kind of eye discharge, any kind of sneezing, anything like that. If they feel warmer, they could have a fever. Usually, if they have a fever, it's going to make them lethargic. They're not going to want to move around. If you suspect that they are sick, that is something that you don't want to wait on. You would want to get them to a vet. They're very delicate at this age and they will deteriorate quickly if you don't act right away. Normally, I find if you act right away, you can get them through a lot of things. But if you don't act right away, you'll get to that kind of point of no return. And another sign, of course, is going to be a loss of appetite. Now, this is going to be my favorite topic, diarrhea. The thing that is going to unalive your kitten the fastest is going to be diarrhea because it will lead to dehydration because they're essentially going to have more fluid coming out of them than is going in them. You want to be very vigilant about it and you want to try to correct the loose stool. So that's where you would have that propactolin come in. And also, you're going to notice the frequency. If they're going 3-4 times a day, it's loose stool. It's not as concerning if they're nonstop with it. If it's more frequent than that and you go to pick them up to feed them and you notice that there's diarrhea in there, then that's going to be a sign of a serious problem. You don't want to wait. You want to give them something like propactolin to try to harden it up. And then also, you're going to have to probably think about giving them fluids because, for the most part, if they have diarrhea, they are going to be dehydrated, even if they only have it for a short time. So, in that case, what I'll do is I will add usually a little bit of Pedialyte to the formula or to the gruel. And a lot of these things, when they get older and they are weaned and they're eating regular food, these are also things that you're going to look out for. With the diarrhea, some things that are going to help diarrhea till you can either get to a vet, contact the rescue that you're working with. So again, I said propactolin, that's like a probiotic. And then there's something in there that's going to help to bind everything together. So it does help to harden things. Anytime I notice my stool's a little bit too loose and watery, I do propactolin because it's not going to hurt them. The other thing that you can do is you can actually use some canned pumpkin and add a little bit of that to the food or to the bottle. I use the canned pumpkin a little bit more when they're older. You can use it when they're bottle feeding, but I just find it a little bit easier when they're actually eating and weaned to give them the pumpkin. So what I tend to use is more starch water. You can make rice starch water. You can use pasta starch water. So basically what you're doing is you're going to boil your starch. So either your potatoes, your rice, or your noodles. It's going to be the water that's going to come off of the top when you're boiling it. So just let a little bit of it boil down. You want that water up on the top. Collect that water, let it cool down, and then you can mix that into the bottle, and the starch is going to help to bind. Of course, you don't want to give it to them once it's coming fresh off as it's boiling and super hot. You want it to be lukewarm and cool down. Everybody has some kind of starch at home so they can make starch water. And it's one thing that really does help to bind everything, to just help get things a little bit thicker, and you're not losing as much water with the kittens till you can get them to the vet. But first sign of diarrhea, monitor it very closely because that's one thing that'll wipe them out very fast. In addition to that is going to be the color and the consistency. Okay. And so when I'm talking about consistency too and a little bit of diarrhea, if it looks like melted ice cream and a dark brown color, that's usually them getting used to the food. Keep an eye on it still. Any other color is going to be concerning. So now, one thing I do want to mention is when they're very little, say a week old, their poop is going to look like mustard, like again, newborn babies. So it'll look like mustard, and then you'll notice the color changes to brown. That's normal. If it is bright yellow, that is a sign that they need to get to the vet ASAP. Bright yellow poop and mucousy poop is usually going to indicate parasites that are going to wipe through your litter very fast. Everybody in the litter is going to get it. It is something that can be taken care of, and they can be dewormed for this, but you need to get them to the vet ASAP. You cannot wait on this. Again, if you're noticing a lot of mucus, bright yellow, and when I say bright yellow, it almost resembles like a neon yellow, and it's going to smell atrocious. But once you see that, they absolutely 100% have to get to the vet. They usually will have vomiting associated with this too. But anytime you see vomiting and diarrhea together, do not wait, vet visit. So call the rescue, call whoever you're with and tell them you need to get to the vet right away because this is what's going on. You got vomiting and diarrhea. Take a picture of the poop and send it to them. When you're in the rescue world, it's a totally normal thing. First thing you're going to do, if you're worried about it, take a picture of the poop. You always want rolls. Concerning poop is going to be bright yellow poop and green poop. Those are going to be problems. Foul smelling is going to be a problem. Covered the watery is going to be a problem. Okay, if it's a very hard pellet, and you'll notice the difference between that and a roll, that's usually going to be a constipation problem. Of course, blood in the poop is a problem. If you are feeding them too much, you're going to notice they're going to get a little bit of diarrhea. Okay, so you want them to eat, but if they're eating to the point where they're having diarrhea from eating too much, and usually that's going to be more of a dark brown poop, it's not going to be really mucousy. It's just going to be a lot of dark brown, loose, melted ice cream poop. That means you usually are feeding them a little bit too much. So just try to cut back on the food a little bit too. The other thing is going to be fleas. And this will go from the time too that you pick up the kittens, or if you find the kittens, take them off of social media or whatever. If you see a few fleas, try to pick them off with a flea comb. Don't get overly concerned about a few fleas until you can give them like a flea med. You don't give them any topicals until they're a lot older. But if you pick up a kitten that's younger than this and you notice that they are loaded with fleas, the fleas can actually cause them to have anemia and it can kill them. So at that point, you want to make sure that you get the fleas off of them. Don't use any kind of flea mech. Don't use any kind of flea spray. The easiest and best thing to do is going to be to use like dish soap. I use Blue Dawn, or you can use baby shampoo. Do not use power wash or any other kind of detergents. When you wash the kittens, you always start at the head first and then go down. And once they're done with their bath, you want to make sure that you dry them very quickly because they can chill. I find a lot of people are too quick to give a bath sometimes. I don't like washing the little tiny babies. It's not worth risking chilling them when they can't regulate their temperature. I think we covered most everything, so now we're up to the point where they're going to be weaned. So once they are fully weaned and you notice that they're drinking water and they're not wanting a bottle anymore, they're eating out the dish pretty good. At that point, what I will do is offer them a canned food. So I use canned kitten formula and make sure that they're eating everything. Usually they'll go right for it. The other thing that you can do is offer them a dry formula. When first introducing them to like a dry food, I will moisten it a little bit. Another thing I'm going to show you is this setup here. So most rescues have these. It's just a little pop-up thing. This one is a smaller one. I'll keep my kittens up to 4 kittens will fit in this until they're about 4 weeks old. I do let them out for exercise to play. And then what I'll do is I'll eventually move them out to one of these. I could put a litter box in here. There's enough room in there for some food and water. There are bigger ones. Most rescues are going to have those. They're portable. They pop up. I'll line it with some pee pads, put a litter box in there. And when I put the litter box in there, another thing, kittens like to try to eat litter. Anything they can put in their mouth, they put in their mouth. So once my kittens start going in the box, so at 3 weeks, I'll just put a newspaper in there. Say by 4 weeks, I'll start adding litter in there. I'll use either a non-clumping clay litter or I'll use one of those wood pellet litters, like Catalyst Natural Litter. I don't use anything clumping because if they eat it, it can clump in their belly and cause them some problems. So I won't offer them any kind of like clumping litter, and usually until they're about like 7 weeks old. And you can put them in this comfortably. So, as far as leaving food and water, so if you work, your kittens should be fine. You feed them in the morning before you go to work if they're like 5 weeks old. Leave some dry food out for them so they can eat it all day long in a bowl of water, and then they should be fine till you come home. They're good to go. They all should be drinking water. They should be self sufficient. Now, I say self sufficient, but you still have to monitor them. Any kind of signs where you see that they're acting off, it's going to be a concern. It doesn't matter how old a kitten is, they can go downhill very fast if they get sick. So it's better to just be proactive about it. If you think something's wrong, you can call and ask somebody. It could be nothing, but it also could be something. So it's not worth risking it because they do go downhill very quickly. At 4 weeks, it's usually a pound. Of course, this is like a generalization. Usually it's going to be a pound a month. So we say 8 weeks are going to be 2 pounds. They're time to go get spayed neutered. Of course, it's going to be a per kitten basis. You're going to have some that are going to be a little bit chunkier than others, and you're going to have some that aren't as big as others, and they're just going to be on the smaller side. So it's just a per litter, a per kitten basis. So things that you want to do. So if you find them, and most rescues too would be willing to help you if you do find a kitten, if you're not working with a rescue or taking kittens from a rescue. Your kittens need to be dewormed. You can deworm them as early as 4 weeks. That's a must. They all have worms. Again, that's something either the rescue you're working with or your vet can walk you through with that. The vaccines, some rescues are going to do it as early as 4 weeks. I know other vets are going to recommend 6. My vet is more on the scale of doing it at 6 weeks. Again, it's going to depend, but that's going to be something that they're going to need as well. So you're going to want to get them vaccinated, and the deworming is a must. And then, of course, the definite is going to be spay neuter. And when you get them done early, they don't know anything has been done. So I like getting them in when they're 2 pounds. If you're doing bottle babies, just remember sometimes they're in a bad place. People pick them up. That's how we get them. Other times the moms abandon them for a reason. So don't beat yourself up over it. If you take them, you're giving them a chance that they didn't have. You're giving them love. So that is something that they would not have had the opportunity to get if you did not step up and help them. So don't beat yourself up over it. Don't say, I did something wrong, because you didn't do anything wrong. If anything, you stepped up to help them.
Do you keep separate from your cats?
You want to keep them separated for a good isolation quarantine, because when you come in, you don't know if they could have something. If you keep them isolated for the first couple of weeks, you should be okay as long as you're washing your hands. They're not in direct contact with other cats. I have cats. Most rescue people have cats, and we actually don't even think about it. I have my separate little kitten room that I keep them in. Once they're vaccinated, I'll be like, hey, look at the other cats. Come introduce them to the other cats. But I don't stress out about it. If this is going to be the first time you're bringing kittens in, you want to take it slow with your cat anyway. 'Cause your cat might get a little PO'd. I did not touch on this, and this is an important thing to know. So if you have a bottle kitten and it's a single kitten, you really want to put that kitten with another kitten by the time it reaches 5 weeks old, because otherwise it's not learning proper kitten behavior from another kitten. They learn how to bite, and they learn what is too much by playing with another kitten. So a lot of the times when you have kittens that have a behavioral issue, it's going to be a single kitten that was raised by itself. You want to have it with another kitten up until it's about 7, 8 weeks old, ready for adoption, because otherwise you're going to have a little biter on your hand. If you do have a singleton, put a stuffed animal in there with them, but it is best to get them a friend, because you want them to learn how to bite another kitten and not you. Now, if they do start biting you, usually you can do a quick ow. You exaggerate it, make it very loud, and sometimes it helps them, but not always. So it's always best to have them raised together with another kitten.
If you would like to support more life-saving work like this, every single dollar helps our animals directly. You can find a link to donate in our show notes. Thanks for listening. And that's all the time we have for today's episode. If you are in animal rescue or if you know someone that has a story that should be told, please contact us. We would love to have you or them on the show. Thanks for listening, and please join us next week as we continue to explore the world of animal rescue.